Yu-Gi-Oh cannot be fixed. Why can't Yu-Gi-Oh be fixed? Yu-Gi-Oh is a bad game, apparently. All right. Cosmic Squiddy. For anyone who is old enough to remember Squidward on the dueling book, this is the guy who is famous for playing with the cards upside down. Our ARG streams, classic back in the day. You used to just play with the cards upside down. That was his thing. He was notorious for just playing with the cards upside down. And then, of course, Link Monsters ruined it.
So they came out with an emergency ban list that hit some of the most degenerate cards in the existence of Yu-Gi-Oh! And guess what? People literally just adapted and played the next most degenerate thing. And you know,
weird.
I realize that going first will never be fixed in Yu-Gi-Oh! You want to know why? Because this game has way too many degenerate cards. So the emergency ban list was a great move, by the way. A huge step in the right direction, hitting things like Fossil Dyna, even having the foresight to hit Barrier Statue of the Drop, because that was also a rock monster that can be searched off of Gallic Granite. But guess what? People just played the next best thing. So in Mitsurugi, Pure Mitsurugi at YCS Pittsburgh, I'm sitting at home watching. They are now playing the water statue. It can be searched off of 7 Tachyon, which can be tutored off of Dragluxion, which can be made easily using 2 level 8 Mitsurugi bodies. So as long as you don't use your normal summon, just...
Admittedly, that is a little bit more clunky and convoluted to do. And I don't think the extra deck space is exactly that, you know, free. But... you know, it is true, right? Like that's kind of what happens. We saw it in Snake Eye format. You know, you just have like continuous trap card. What was it, like skill drain or summon limit? You flip that on your opponent, and then they banned it, and then you just go down, and then we went back to skill drain, and then they limited it, and then, you know, and then it was an anti-spell, and then they banned anti-spell. So very slowly but surely we're going down the totem pole of floodgates. Hopefully they just get rid of all of them and realize that cards printed in 2004 don't really have a place today. It's just the reality of it.
off of Habakiri, you can
summon limit, then skill drain, then anti-spell, right? Like, that's the order of operations. So, you know, like... there just has to come a point where pretty much there needs to be like 100+ hits on a ban list to get rid of floodgates, because people will find ways like Dragluxion or any sort of convoluted mess to try and get into a floodgate that stops your opponent from playing, because the best combos in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are combo decks that don't just put up multiple negates, but just straight up restrict a line of your deck's functionality.
full combo yet again and lock out your opponent, just like how you would with Fossil
Like the current
Dyna.
ban list, yeah, but that's what he's saying. The current ban list still has, like, you know, cards that you replace.
Crystron could summon out to the opponent's field using the Concari, but now people are just playing Spell Canceller. It's literally more or less the same thing. If you have a Spell Canceller on the board, plus like any form of disruption, the powerful board breakers are all spell cards. Decks like Pure Mitsurugi, Draco Tail, they're all very spell focused. Even Yummy relies on a lot of spells to push through boards, and you just can't do that when Spell Canceller is on the field. So nothing really changed. It's like Patrick Copeland was saying, there are
nothing
too many
changed.
Floodgates. You can't ban the floodgates because there are too many of them. Ever since the competitive inception of Yu-Gi-Oh, there has always been some kind of degenerate turn 1 BS that the player can do to either win on the spot or lock the opponent out from playing. So if they go and ban the remaining barrier statues and hit Spell Canceller, well, there's going to be something else that's toxic, and then the players are just going to pivot to that. If we take a look at Yu-Gi-Oh history, if we go down memory lane, there was the Yada lock. Even though it wasn't like an FTK, it was still something you could do to lock out the opponent. Chaos Emperor Dragon would get rid of their entire hand, and then you summon Yadagrasu and the game's over because your opponent can't do anything. They can't draw for turn, and they have no cards left.
You can tell how old Squiddy is, huh?
FTK. It was literally an FTK deck that people underestimated, and it ended up winning the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship.
You know what's insane about Frog FTK, by the way, for anyone who's ever watched games with Frog FTK? That deck is really good without the FTK. Like, it is just a really good deck.
X-Sabers on turn 1. If you have Rescue Cat plus Fall Troll, you just rip your opponent's hand for multiple cards with double X-Saber Gotems. Turn 1 Infernity Loops with Trishula, you can make like triple Trishula on your turn, or just standard Infernity shenanigans. If you set multiple barriers or breaks, there's no deck that can break through that. You know, there's so many combo-heavy decks that end on like a pseudo FTK end board that cannot be broken. In 2013, we had the Wind-Up Hand Loop. You rip your opponent's hand for multiple cards. Again,
I love this,
or you set
this
up
history lesson.
Call monsters, call
Good
spells.
times.
Your opponent just can't play either. There have been multiple consistent FTK
Oh,
decks,
he didn't show the Shotmaster.
where we had the Tempest Magician. You know, we also had the Starving Venom Burn with the Leaderless guy. We had Goki with the Gumbler, hand rip for 4 cards, plus a U-Lock board. There were Dark World hand loops. There was the Triple Colossus end board that locks your opponent out from playing. My point is, there's always something crazy when you're going first in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because this is the only card game without actual hard restrictions. It's not like Pokemon where there's energies, or Magic the Gathering where there's land cards that you have to play. You have to tap for mana. There's no mana system. The only hard restrictions that we have in this game are, number 1, 1 normal summon per turn. turn. And number 2, recent addition in the past decade, I might add, the hard once per turn effects on cards. This is why like a lot of the older cards that say once per turn are not hard once per turns, and they inevitably
1900
become
silent
really
movies
busted
was
because you can use
inspiring,
multiple of
yeah.
them. And this is another reason why the normal summons have been so ridiculously pushed in this game, because they realize that the normal summon is like the one hard restriction on the game. So it's okay for them to print like, you know, Snake Eye Ash, Ice Raizio, Aramasa even. But I think at the end of the day, this is something that we have to accept as a player base. This is what Yu-Gi-Oh is. There is no restriction.
Do we have
on
to
stuff,
accept
but
this,
that's just
though?
how the game works. So it never.
But like, do we have to accept this? Because I don't think we do. And Konami is doing something about it. Very slowly, very slowly, incrementally. I mean, game's been around for years, decades. And, you know, we're getting through a lot of them very slowly. But it'll happen eventually, where every problematic floodgate will be gone.
Inevitably, there will be things that are busted going first. Unfortunately, that's just how the game is. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why a lot of people, including myself, like Yu-Gi-Oh so much, because it's so crazy. You can do so many things in one turn, which number one makes gameplay a lot more funner. We're not like relying on turns. Like people always say, oh, there's only 2 or 3 turns on average in Yu-Gi-Oh. That sounds awful, because coming from other games like Pokemon and Magic, how they measure interaction is through turns because of those restrictions. You know, playing 1 land per turn, playing 1 energy per turn, for example. There are restrictions which inevitably
You know, the very little amount of Pokemon I played, the biggest thing that was off-putting was like like no interaction. Like, yeah, you get turns and you go back and forth, you do things to each other, but like you don't. There's no quick effects. Zero. I'm pretty sure through the history of Pokemon, there's been like 1 or 2 cards that even do anything remotely close to like a quick effect on the opponent's turn. That was very off-putting to me personally. I just felt that wasn't really engaging. It's sort of just 2 people doing solitaire stuff to each other, and then, yeah. You've played Hearthstone, it's the exact same thing or close. I don't know, Hearthstone doesn't have quick effects, but there's a lot of, like, triggers and death rattles, traps and secrets. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, Hearthstone doesn't have that much interaction, but Hearthstone is really fun for other reasons. That... For me personally, it's because it's digital and there's just like a lot of crazy, wacky things that can happen in Hearthstone compared to a card game, like physical card game. Like you can't emulate Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron in Yu-Gi-Oh, can you? I mean, you could in Macedo potentially, but anyway, that's the point I'm making, right? Apples and oranges, kind of different comparison. But yeah, for me personally, Pokemon didn't really feel that engaging in that way because you just didn't like do anything. You just sort of waited for your turn. But you know, that's not like a bad thing. It's just for me personally, in my opinion, to caveat for the internet, I just didn't think it was that interesting.
Translate to more turns. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, you only have like 2 or 3 turns because there are a lot of more interactions in each.
See, this is just wrong, right? The principal idea for a card game is that each interaction is on your own turn. No, not necessarily. That's where Yu-Gi-Oh is like most famous for. It doesn't really do it that much anymore, but outside of like what? Exodia Obliterate, what is like the most iconic voice line from the anime? You activated my trap card. Right? Like that Yu-Gi-Oh is like famous for that, right? It's not really like that anymore, unfortunately. But that is a big principle of Yu-Gi-Oh, is like the interaction. You know, as little as there is with floodgates, but technically, you know, playing back and forth effects on each other's turn is sort of maybe what Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of known for in some ways, not always. More famously for not being able to activate anything, but you know, there are ways to play on each other's turn. You activated my hand trap. They're gonna redo that scene with Ash Blossom.
Turn with having a lot of hand trap boards, a lot of grinding, a lot of effects activating everywhere, a lot of searching your decks. Turns take a lot longer, so you don't measure turns as an indicator for how good the game is. You measure interactions. And if you look at non-card games, Marvel vs. Capcom.
This is also a very like important point, by the way. Like turn length and turn count are not necessarily always going to be the best measures of interaction, because you can have a very long duel, but that doesn't mean that there was a lot of interaction. You can have a lot of steps in a certain in one turn, but that also does not mean that there was a good duel, right? We've all been in like floodgate stalemates, sealed matches where someone has like you know, one of those aroma jar style cards, cannot be destroyed by battle. You're just setting and passing, and it's like 30 turn duel. Oh, it must have been a lot of interaction. No, there wasn't actually. Mystic Mine, Floodgates. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you can have a duel that's 2 turns, and while there were 50 steps taken by someone, it could just be like full combo, and then on the opponent's turn, negate, 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 negate. Right? So it goes both ways. So interaction isn't necessarily a measure of quantity, either in turn count or in steps. But I would argue interaction is measured best, somewhat subjectively, via real activation of card effects between both players. Generally, the more activations of cards that happen in an equal proportion means that it was a good duel. If turn 1 player makes 20 steps and turn 2 player has 20 steps, you can probably assume that was like a decent game because there was back and forth there.
Very much similar. That game is basically you touch someone and it's like a full combo. You basically win the game. And I think that's one thing that we love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is it's so...
Alright, is that a 125 hit combo? What is that, the Adamantipator of fighting games? Like, what?
chaotic, being able to do all these interactions. Yes, they can be cancerous sometimes, but at the end of the day, the same players that have been topping events and winning YCSs, SJCs, ever since the dawn of competitiveness in this game. We're talking like the early 2000s.
That's light.
It's always been the same names. Why? Because this game still takes skill at the end of the day. The fact that there's...
Oh, yeah, and of course, that's the most important thing. Is like, yeah, while a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is garbage and, like, you know, annoying and stupid in this, like, turn one wombo combo or floodgate style gameplay, like, the best players do still keep winning because they find the best ways to abuse these mechanics.
So many things you can do, so many interactions.
And that requires a lot of good deck building, foresight, planning,
very skillful at the highest levels,
and also,
even more
weirdly enough, I know, difficult to say, unfortunate that many of you will disagree, but it also does require skill to activate. A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games are non-games. Like, on my way to Master 1, for example, I would say that maybe 15, 17-ish% of my duels were just non-games. My opponent just went first, I didn't draw any hand traps, and I lost, right? But most of the games, you are interacting, you are playing, and you are trying to win. Via, you know, using your cards in the correct order.
For recently because of how many interactions are in the game, cards having a billion effects that you forget about, and even deck building. If there's a degenerate FTK combo, it forces you to scour the card pool for an obscure card that was previously unplayable, but suddenly...
Anyone ever been hit by Neko Main King in tier format?
This game means that you can literally look through bulk in Yu-Gi-Oh! And find something good. There's no reason why Yu-Gi-Oh! Bulk is the most expensive out of any card game. More so than Magic, more so than Pokemon, which
Wait, is that true?
Pennies for their bulk. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards can inevitably become good, even though they've been unplayable. You read a card and you're like, wow, this card is absolutely crap. It's not playable. But then some card comes out and all of a sudden that card becomes like insanely good. Like even cards like DNA Surgery back in 2013 against spellbooks, all of a sudden DNA Surgery became insane because you call dragons and then they can't activate any of their spellbook.
It's funny that the example he gives is yet another floodgate.
Not think to be remotely playable become playable over time. And that's one thing I love about the deck building perspective of
he's probably not referring to like general bulk, but like the idea that like some random tech card from 20 years ago suddenly is like this.
People complaining about this on Twitter. They're like, oh, this game can't be fixed. There's so many crazy things. Well, guess what? This is a game that we played for a long time. Like myself, I've been in this game for over 15 years playing competitively. It's always been toxic. It is not a recent thing. A lot of people seem to think it's a recent thing where it's like, oh, okay, the game has become so fast and power crept. No, the game has always been like this. And this is one of the reasons why I love it so much. There's no easy way to fix it per se, but there are ways to keep it in check. And I think the R&D team is doing a fantastic job with that. Recently, it seems like Konami Japan has given them the green light, you know, making changes to the time rules, making the Genesis format, and of course the emergency ban list that we just got, where they're actually attacking cards that people have said have been annoying, have been busted going first cards for like a decade. You know, Dimension No Barrier has been a crazy card that's been very, very one-sided. They just went and hit this card. I think they're doing a really great job, and I love to see it. You know, they're giving new prize support as well. The prize support, they're still working on this, making this even better. This is something that's been unprecedented.
Wasn't there supposed to be a part 2 announcement of the prize support stuff, by the way? I feel like that was a thing. Maybe it's just all Mandela effect gaslighting, but I vaguely remember them saying there was going to be more stuff announced, and then they just kind of didn't. They forgot. That makes sense. Like, what are the prize cards like for first and second and third? Like these days, like, is it still Solarion and stuff like that? Wasn't it those custom giant cards? I don't know if that was like part 2 of that or if that's like a different thing. Custom giant cards also only for like first place, right? Because the OG prize cards are what, like top 4? You get the ultra for first, and then I think second as well gets an ultra, maybe even third, and then top 4 is like super. No, that wouldn't make any sense. Something like that, but yeah. Air fryers, true. They're waiting for the Switch 2 price to drop.
Traditionally had, you know, the worst price support, but now it seems
Wait,
like
wasn't the recent French
Open
Open a Switch 2, or was it a Switch 1?
trying to actively make it better. They still have restrictions at the end of the day based on what Konami Japan dictates, it seems, but they're trying to play around that. They're trying their best to tiptoe around that and give what's best for the players, what we're asking this whole entire time, which I think is phenomenal. And again, I see a lot of people complaining on Twitter, but I think at the end of the day, we should be appreciating that, number one, we signed up to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's a broken game, and number two, they're actually trying to make it the best version of this broken game that has the most interactivity. So instead of sitting...
That's a very good point. And way to phrase it. They're trying to make this kind of broken game into the best version of said broken game. Like, that's genuinely probably a good way to look at it, right?
At home complaining on Twitter, I would say adapt. Try and beat the metagame. Try and actually play this game competitively, because once you realize, even though there are degenerate things going on,
but it's still PP.
It's still the same faces that are doing well in this game. Guess what? Because this game, at the end of the day, skill is still outweighing the luck factor. Skill is outweighing these FTKs, these degenerate locks, super heavy combo decks. If you're good at the game, you will find a way to beat this game, even though there is a lot of RNG and variance. There is definitely more skill. And when everyone's playing with the same set of rules and circumstances, the best thing we can do is adapt and play the best with what we're given.
It was a very abrupt end to the video, but yeah, the best way to look at it is like everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is in the same situation. Like, you are not uniquely what's the word? You are not like uniquely targeted by the variance of Yu-Gi-Oh! So everyone is also going to suffer from that, right? So yeah, adapting and stuff is one of the ways you can alleviate that, but it might not be the best answer for everyone. For me personally, why I don't play this game like ultra competitively, you know, occasionally I'll get like the nice little I'll be in the mood to like play Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively, like, you know, I did Master 1 recently. And that's because I actually do like the current format of Master Duel. Outside of a couple of egregious issues like, you know, Maxi and Malice. For the most part, it was actually a pretty fun grind. But the reason I don't go all in is because of that, like, 15-17% thing that I mentioned. There is a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels that are non-games. Too many. And in a game of a card game that has variance and luck, I think there is too much of that variance and luck for me to enjoy it. You can't win every game in Yu-Gi-Oh! You can't win every duel. But the problem is, like, a lot of games are non-games. Now, if it was only, like, 5%, I could tolerate it. But it feels like much of the duels that I play are non-games. There's one too many non-games for me to enjoy. So yeah. This video has a lot of dislikes, by the way. My god. Did he say anything controversial? I guess, like, maybe telling people to adapt was getting them a little bit upsetty. The skill floor is on the roof. The skill ceiling is on Mars. And if you try to build a spaceship to get to Mars, you'll get hit by Nibiru along the way. That is the craziest analogy, but I guess it kind of works. I mean, I suppose, like, maybe technically not wrong. They're going to go to the next best thing. Okay, so you ban those, and then you ban the next ones, and then you ban the next ones. There's 12,000 cards, not an infinite number. Yeah, like, true. That is what's going on. I mean, that is stating the obvious, right? Konami never learned from the past because they don't have to. Saying that we shouldn't ban problem cards because people would just play the next best thing is a pretty terrible argument. He didn't say that. Saying we shouldn't ban problem... He didn't say that. Right? Am I going crazy? Like, that just wasn't an argument. He literally said, like, oh, we're, you know, commending Konami for actually doing... trying to address the problems and banning the problem cards. With that reasoning, why would we ever ban any card? People will play the best next thing, right? For your other point, just because something requires skill doesn't mean it's enjoyable. I'm sure breaking bricks with your forehead requires some level of skill. But does that mean it's enjoyable or that you should partake because it's even the same people at the top of the forehead brick breaking for a long time now? Yeah, I mean, you know, the Punch in the Nuts championship is quite skillful, actually. There's a lot of people who can take a ton of, like, punches to the dick. Now, does that sound like a YCS you guys want to take part in? Like, probably not, right? But ultimately, like, that is like a tournament that probably will have a meta game and will have people who are at the top. I basically gave up after the blue cards game. Wait, is he talking about Relinquished or is he talking about Kagari? This seems like such a weird argument. You can't ban everything. I don't think he said that. Did I don't know. Like, maybe he alluded to it or something, but I feel like his general point was they are addressing each of those cards, and it's reaching a point where they are hitting the problem cards to the point where they're less and less egregious. He kind of did imply it initially. I mean, I think, like, making a statement doesn't mean you agree with it. He's just laying out the foundations of an argument. I don't know. I guess he didn't really word it perfectly, because clearly enough people seem to think he said that. That's not what I got from this, personally. Axel Synchro, Burning Soul. Yeah, okay. Well, that's the video. Shoutouts to Squiddy, if you're going to go check out his channel. It was very well edited. I did like the video essay style thing and the aesthetic of the video itself. So that was really cool.